Welcome back to the WP Minute. Today's special guest, Ariele Krantzow. Ariele, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. So good to
Um,
be here.
we're going to let you know there's always a lot of firsts on this podcast, and this is a first for me to be recording in the unfinished part of my basement. Luckily, my wife doesn't watch the show, or else she'd be killing me right now. But with the magic of Hollywood, I actually might put myself on a green screen, and those who are watching the podcast instead of just listening won't even see the horrible mess behind me. So thanks for being the first to be recorded in my basement, really.
You know what? It's an honor, truly. I'm so glad you trust me with this.
For folks who don't know, who are the uninitiated, you hail from Pressable, one of our most long-term, fantastic sponsors here at the WP Minute. So, of course, thanks for that. But I think folks who showed up at the WordCamp in Portland last summer might have seen you, and that was like week one, right? Or week two of you being at the company?
I think it was like month one. It was
Oh, month
definitely
one. Okay.
like month one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I joined the company and like as I was signing my paperwork, they're like, we have to buy our tickets for WordCamp, so like you're joining us, right? Like not no surprises here. I was like, yes. You buy my ticket. I'm like calling my husband. I'm like, so the week of the end of September, I'm gonna be at a conference. Like, sorry, you have the kids.
Yeah. Did you know what WordCamps were all about before joining Pressable?
I did not. So I am, while I've been a long time WordPress user, from the marketing perspective, I've worked on at several companies and their backend was WordPress. I mostly led content and content teams. Uh, and so I've always been a user of WordPress and never been like the developer of WordPress. I've always gotten it just handed to me in a pretty box and been like, make your blog posts, edit the website. So it's been really wonderful to get initiated into the WordPress community. And people at the company joked, they're like, oh, I can't believe you're going to WordPress after like month one. And I was like, please. I was like, this is so great to be just dropped into the community. And I think being being connected with Jess Frick, who's our head of product, she's like the queen. I was like, look, I'm like, she's the queen of WordCamp. Like she knows everybody. So she was walking around like introducing me. It was such a great welcome to the WordPress community and to Pressable, and being able and like being forced to sort of stand by a booth and talk about your product on month one, being like talk about the education factor going from like 0 to 60, where normally you have some ramp up time to really like dive into your product, learn what it does. I didn't have that. I was like studying for for WordCamp, but I'm so glad that it happened that way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Lots to talk about. I want to talk about what your role at Pressable is. We're talking about the WordCamp that kind of shook things up for the community. We'll touch upon that just a touch as we move throughout this conversation. But you're squarely in the marketing role. You were touching and maybe using WordPress as an end user at the last gig. What's the background for you in marketing? Has it always been marketing? And I'll just give you a second to think about that, because to set the stage, I talk to a lot of marketers who come, into the space. They end up in marketing, but maybe their previous background was, I don't know, art and theater, right? How all of that stuff plays well into actual marketing roles. So have you always been in marketing, and what's your key specialty?
Sure. So if I thought about when I was starting college, no, marketing was never in my plan. I actually went to Parsons. I studied design, and when I was the lucky ones who graduated in 2008, and it's like, oh, no one needs you to do anything. And so I actually took the opportunity to like go traveling, and was like, well, no one's hiring me anyway. Um, and when I came back, I was looking at different roles that were available. I was looking at roles in graphic design. I was looking at all different types of roles. And just by chance, a friend of a friend had worked at Wix, which was an itty bitty company at the time. It was in 2010, and they had recently started their New York office. I think it was still on Flash just to date us back there. It wasn't yet like that's where Wix started. So I was brought in and was kind of able to like define my role as the years went on, and ended up in more of like a community role that was on the marketing team. Sometimes it wasn't on the marketing team. And from there, it kind of led to doing all sorts of marketing activities because I was doing a lot of events. I was promoting them, and like paid social became a thing, and people were asking questions about SEO, and I was really drawn to all of these areas. And I ended up going back to business school, got into realize like content marketing was a place where I could be really creative and really drive the strategy and success of an organization. And so that's really what led me to marketing, was this idea that I can still be creative and be analytical at the same time.
Yeah.
And so so I've always been, from then on, I've mostly been in content focused roles, always been on fairly small teams. So having, one person under me on a content team and leading that, and was thankfully given the opportunity to make really big changes and do really creative things. I had really understanding CEOs, and which is I has not always been the case. And I know that's really lucky to have a leader of the company that understands marketing and sees the value of content marketing specifically. And then was approached middle of last year by Pressable, and the role just seemed like my dream role in every aspect. And I'm so glad that it worked out, and it has proven to be as an amazing of an opportunity and place to work as I ever imagined. So I'm really
Nice.
grateful.
One of the things that, and I'm curious if I think you'll agree with this thought, but you let me know where it fits in to your life. I think one of the things that is great about WordPress, which goes under the radar a lot, is that the software itself can enable an individual, teams of people. I think if there were a real like a local initiative, WordPress allows users to learn and understand the web outside of just web design, right? So like you can teach somebody WordPress. They can certainly learn web design. That's probably like the de facto route that a lot of folks go. Or they could learn like how to be a developer, right? Unpack WordPress, learn JavaScript, learn PHP, HTML. But then there's the whole end user side of it, which is writing blogs, becoming a marketer, becoming a writer, becoming an air quotes webmaster. These are tools and talents and resources that are almost byproducts of WordPress. And I would like, this is more of just like a grandstanding moment, not a direct question, but your thoughts. I would like to see more people teaching WordPress outside of like the web design aspect of it, right? Or that build a website, build an e-commerce business for it. Because as a like you as a marketer, WordPress probably became a tool at first was like, oh my God, how do I use this thing, to where has this been all my life as a content marketer, making my life easier. Might be a little struggle, a little uphill battle in the beginning to like learn all this stuff. But once you learn it and you realize how creative you can be with it, how flexible WordPress is, it can become a real benefit to just knowing and using WordPress to get that next job, to unlock this new talent. What are your thoughts on how WordPress can enable people to earn a living?
I agree with everything you said there. There's so much in previous roles that in interviews I've been asked, do you know how to use WordPress? Because there is a learning curve in terms of you get on and it looks like something a little bit, I wouldn't say scary, as like coming from someone like I know how to like was doing like basic coding and I was like front end development's not for me. Um, and it's one of those things and those skills that if something breaks, you know how to fix it, you know how to optimize it, you know how, you know, when your Yoast plugin is telling you X, Y, and Z, you're like, yes, and no. And you realize like, especially, you know, thinking I'm going to bring up AI, but like now that AI is a thing, right? Every AI tool is giving you suggestions and you're having to figure out, well, I'm the person and so I have the knowledge and I know how to make the right choices and I don't have to rely on this robot to tell me this is the right decision and that's the wrong decision. Where if you didn't have that WordPress knowledge, you would be a little intimidated by all of these tools and suggestions. I honestly think the WordPress backend and the platform and the user experience is not that scary. And I've used several other CMSs in my career. And at some point, I was like, can't we just use WordPress? Like, let's just call a spade and it's bad. It's just bad.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, would you still classify it as, or how would you classify it? Would you classify it as beginner friendly, or you'd have to be more intermediate to use something like WordPress compared to the other CMSs that you've used?
I'd say they're fairly on the same level in terms of, I feel like anytime you use a new technology, even if it's the easiest thing to use, it's always a bit like, where is that? And so you have to have the mentality of click and learn, and you can't be afraid to break something. And I joke with Wayne, our front end developer, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm going in here and I'm going to break something and I might need you to fix it. And he's, you know, he said to me, and it was like very early on when I was starting, and he's like, no, we'll unfix it. We'll fix it. Don't worry. It's not going to break because it's a website and you can fix it. And it's okay. Right. Like you can't be afraid to break things to try and get them the way that you want it to be.
Yeah. I want to talk about AI and how we'll all lose our jobs in a couple months. No, just kidding.
I know, sitting pretty.
There's a lot here, and I think, look, I think anyone who's been listening, obviously to this podcast or tuning into the WordPress space, Pressable is an automatic company. Automatic, obviously, is in the news a lot these days. I think that there's a lot that one can debate about the situation that we're in, but I think that WordPress is, I often think about like, is WordPress really under attack from other companies more so than it is under attack by things like AI that are, you know, I've been using AI to build these little bespoke, little ad hoc apps that I'm making, things I could never do 2 years ago, right? Things I could never do, certainly not 20 years ago. And I'm looking at AI as the page builder for software these days. Just like we have Elementor, we have Gutenberg, we have Beaver Builder, Divi, we have these tools to help us build on top of WordPress and do things within WordPress. I'm looking at AI going, damn, it's like AI is the Elementor for any software that I can build. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but I also I look at us versus, or WordPress versus the world of AI and software development, and how much WordPress is going to be impacted by that. And I'm curious, like your thoughts as a marketer, because you know we won't have to talk about like building websites, but is AI part of your daily routine? How are you leveraging it? I'm leveraging it in certain ways. Are you worried at all about AI and WordPress? What's your take on this crazy timeline that we're in?
Yeah. So WordPress and I think I think AI complements everything. And in the same way that it can be abused and used wrong and lowering the quality, I think that the people who learn to use it correctly and who are using it, not to do their jobs for them, but it will enhance everything that someone is doing. And just one thing, especially with marketing, is I can do things so much faster than I was doing 2 years ago. There's just so much, but with that also, I'll say, comes an expectation to produce more faster
Mm.
with fewer resources,
Mm.
because I have this little buddy next to me helping me brainstorm ideas, helping me decide on word choice, and help, just helping me formulate my thoughts faster and just better. At the end of the day, the you can't just go in and say, chat GPT, go write me this article. It's never going to be good enough. But you can say, hey, I want to write an article on this. These are the keywords that I want to hit. Can you help me figure out what's the right way to approach this? And, or, help me, like, I use it as just really like an assistant. It is exactly what it was really meant to be. Um, and just help me make those choices and help me make those decisions faster. And that allows me to make the right decisions and to get the right content out there faster for marketing, whether it's ads, whether it's a drip campaign, whether it's a customer case study, whether it's an ebook, right? All of these strategic writing pieces are just enhanced. And from the WordPress perspective and being able to like have it code for you, like, yes, I'm sure it can. Is it as good as someone doing it by themselves? I don't know. But a smart developer working with AI is going to create amazing things.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing for marketing too, right? Like it's at this stage in the game, which is January 2025, depending on when you're watching this, AI might have already taken over and none of us are here anymore. But if I ask ChatGPT to write me a blog post about whatever X amount of topic, it's just going to, and if it's just a very simple prompt, it's just a very generic piece of content, right? And you can debate like, where was this content sourced? Is it the same piece of content that 1,000 of us marketers are regurgitating all the time? I don't have the answers for that. But the point is I see the same concepts happening, or not the same concept, but the same output. If I just vaguely ask it to write me something, it produces a vaguely written piece of content. If I vaguely ask it to code me something, it vaguely codes something for me. I think it's much more exciting to see it code something, because you're like, oh my God, I could never do that, right? And that is the amazing part on the coding side. But on the creative side, it still needs a lot of work. And here's a question. I think we'll see a premium of human written content or human created content in the future. Do you have any insights into like maybe how Automatic thinks about the human side of content that you're outputting, experiences, one-on-one conversations? Like, what are your thoughts on like the value of human generated content, which is wildly crazy to even say, but like human generated content versus AI content? Do you have like this delineation point where you can see one is more valuable than the other?
So I can't speak for Automatic as a whole. I can't even speak for Pressable as a whole, but I can tell you from my experience. And the first thing I think of when you're saying those things to me is that I think from Google, from SEO. And there is a clear preference for quality over quantity. And it's becoming more and more apparent that Google knows if you just popped it into AI and had it spit out a piece. It just does. It knows that that's not how people speak. Maybe as AI gets more advanced, it will have to update and become more advanced. And we're just one-upping each other
Yeah.
every single time, right? Like I joke, I'm like, I've been in the marketing game so long that I remember when you could just put white text over a white background and call that SEO. And like every time we humans figure out a hack, Google's going to figure out, oh, this is a hack, and we're going to try and find that content. So that's where I see it, is that the human is always going to be able to do it better, have a unique perspective that AI is not going to have. Now, for more transactional things, does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if I'm starting a new e-commerce company and I just need AI to write me the you know, thanks for buying this email, and whatever comes after that, those super transactional emails that require no creativity and just you have to send it with the order number and this and that, like, yeah, like don't think too hard. Just have AI do that for you. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to actually create something of value for other people, you need a person.
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah. I definitely see the impact. Another, soapbox moment coming, but I'm sure you follow a lot of the WordPress. Obviously, you follow the WordPress like news from other, not just the WP Minute, but other outlets, other individuals, and WordPress specifically is interesting because, as you know, it's working at Pressable, and underneath the Automatic umbrella, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of importance behind open source software, what's happening to WordPress, hosting companies, tech companies, etc. But there's not a lot of news coverage. I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek with a lot of the stuff happening, these days. Yes, some bigger news outlets are covering WordPress these days. But on the boring years of WordPress, those outlets aren't here. It's just me and, a few other people in the WordPress space who cover this stuff. And the point that I'm getting to is for, niche news or pockets of news, not just WordPress, but other important areas, whether that's like community news, you're in another industry that doesn't get covered a lot from, big media. AI is going to be that thing that just replaces people covering that sector, right? And especially for WordPress, there's so many people that have WordPress newsletters that sort of air quotes compete with the WP Minute, or that maybe I compete with, that I think what'll happen is people will be like, you know what, just give me my AI bot, come over here, give me my weekly update. I don't need to listen to Matt anymore. And what I'm doing is forecasting my own demise with AI. But I think that's what's gonna happen, is the first to fall are gonna be like the headline things. Right? Give me the market report through AI. Just no other cruff. Just what's the report? Right? What's the headline, and summarize it in 2 sentences for me. And I think that I already see it with AI doing that in some pockets of news. Humans already do it where they're just like, I'm going to have my own newsletter, and here's the same 10 links that we all send out to our newsletters, specifically in the WordPress space. That humans are almost ruining their own experience that way, and people are going to need to dig deeper. And maybe that's the essence of this whole AI thing, is if you're in the creative space and you're in the marketing space, specifically if you're in the WordPress space, you're going to have to dig deeper and roll up your sleeves and do better work to compete against the generalist AI bot that everyone will have. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us here through what we said, is dig deeper, roll up your sleeves, and do better work as a marketer and as a creative. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the main idea that I've been seeing is that AI is, yes, I'm going to use AI as a search engine. It's already happening. It's already happening. I think from it,
Yeah.
again, from an SEO perspective, we're thinking about how are people talking to AI and asking those questions versus how a few years ago people would just type into Google. The way you structure those sentences is different. And so from a marketing perspective, you have to speak differently, and almost you have to speak more human like, and you have to have a unique perspective, because someone's going to go into their AI and ask for today's report on WordPress, and if you're not saying something that is unique and relatable, then it's not going to pull it up, because it's not going to see it as something important, because
Yeah.
it's going to say, oh, here's 10 things saying it the same 10 ways. And it's going to be like, what is this? They're going to put one
Right.
thing. But if there's something unique, you're going to come up in that. And one thing from like in the marketing world, we all see AI as a media source, almost like it's just as
Yeah.
important to think about how people are speaking to AI, how someone's, oh, okay, she's muted, how people are going to ask Alexa a question. We think about that from a marketing perspective. And if you're not answering that question in the way it's being asked, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
so from AI is just the next thing that's pushing humans further to be more creative and to be, and like you said, like to dig deeper and do better. And
Yeah.
that's just going to be, it's just the next thing that's pushing us there. Are we doing great as a human race? I don't know. But
Yeah. Debatable.
um, it's definitely debatable.
Yeah.
But from a commerce perspective and from the internet perspective, there's so much to be done, and there's so much to be said, and there's so much to learn. And I always think about, like, the last company I worked for was a customer education platform, and I've never drank the Kool-Aid so hard, and to think that it's so important to educate your customers. And in the same way, it's so important to make sure that you're hitting every single area and aspect of what your customers could possibly be thinking about. And even from the Pressable perspective, we're now putting together, sometime in the near future, I'll let you know, when we are working on a really easy, digestible way to be a bigger part of the WordPress conversation, but not just WordPress specifically, but WordPress is the internet, right? And so thinking about people who are interested in WordPress or want to learn WordPress are interested in all aspects of the internet. And so you can't just have this really narrow conversation. You can, but you're going to run out of things to talk about pretty quickly. You
Sure.
have to think about it as the internet as a whole and how people interact with it and where that's leading in the future.
Yeah. One of the things that Jess Frick said when she was on the show is that Pressable sort of operates like a startup within a startup. It's like this culture where, like, you're still having to Pressable, that is still like prove yourself to the hosting world, even though you're under the Automatic umbrella. Is that, now that you've been there a few months, is that culture fit ring true to you? Have things adjusted slightly? What's your thoughts on, like, being the startup within the startup? I don't want to say underdog, but I don't know if you feel that way. But
We don't feel that way.
what's your thoughts on startup within the startup?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's not so much in the way that the company is viewed. And yes, we don't have the huge social following of a big company, and which we are growing and working hard to do and to become a bigger part of the WordPress conversation. Like connecting with you and connecting with other people in the space and being at WordPress and at WordCamp and talking about what we do. So we do have to prove ourselves in some way. But I will say that we're we really focus on quality. Pressable is a quality host. We do not accept subpar, because then why are we even here? Because our competitors can do it better. If we're not even trying, if we're just trying to be similar to them, then what's the point of even doing all of this? We have a better product. That's why we're doing all of this. We're going to take better care of your website. We're going to take better care of your customers. And from the, from the community aspect, being a startup is just almost makes things easier. I don't have to ask 10 people and get the approval of 10 people to make every decision I need to make. I've worked in larger organizations. There's a lot of red tape sometimes. The freedom and the fluidity that the entire Pressable team has to own what they're doing and make that decision. You can inform some people, but for the most part, our team is built of really intelligent, hardworking, motivated people who know what they're doing, because we don't have the luxury of having somebody on our team that doesn't cut it. Yeah. And so when you're like, one of the things Pressable's so proud of is our level of support, because we don't have the luxury of having someone on our support team that can't figure it out themselves. And as the company grows, we're not lowering that bar. We're not all of a sudden going to hire somebody who's like not as good. We're keeping that bar where it is. And so what's going to happen over the years is just the people at Pressable are just going to be getting better and better. And the product can only go up from here. And every bit of feedback we take with care and consideration and figure out how to improve the experience. And because we have that agility, we can say, our product roadmap is our product roadmap. But if someone says, this is why I'm not happy with whatever's going on, or I think you could do this better. Even for example, when I joined the company, I was moving one of my husband's company's websites over to Pressable because, well, why not have the best? And I was like analyzing the experience as I was going through it and made notes. And I was like, this is where I got stuck. This is what could be better. And I'm clearly like the not techie person. So from the Pressable family, like a lot of people that we deal with are very technical, but there's tons of people like me who aren't all that technical, that moving a website from host to host is nerve-wracking and can affect business. And to be able to fix those tiny little gaps to make it a better experience is something that our team is like profoundly aware of and able to make those adjustments quickly.
Are agencies the best customer fit for Pressable these days? I think that was, many years ago when Pressable came on as a sponsor, that was a lot of it, right? You're building the dashboard experience leaned heavily into what I think an agency would require, let alone like want to have in a control panel, but they require like some of like the reporting, the analytics. God, one of my favorite things is I can just change the admin password right there in the dashboard, which is like a no-brainer for that a lot of hosting companies are still lacking in. Agency is still the best fit, or has that grown a little bit over the last, year or so?
Agencies are still a huge audience for us. They're definitely our main audience. And I think something we've been talking about internally and just what's been happening with our product is, as our product is getting better, our agency size is growing. So where we used to really focus on these smaller agencies, we're becoming the best choice for larger agencies that have thousands of sites. And because of all of those things that you said, we think about what somebody who's managing multiple sites not just requires, but what makes the experience better and what makes it just easier for them to get through the day to day, whether it's, scheduling plugin updates. With a click of a button, like you just have to be like, yes, I want that. And you can customize your schedule, right? It's so easy, especially like, okay, so I'm thinking about, I have one website. I can just go in and do it whenever it makes sense for me. But if you're managing 10, 20, 50, 100, 2,000 websites, you need something that's just thinking for you and taking a lot of that pressure off. Everything that you need to do is customizable and makes it easy to have that experience.
In the day-to-day role, you're putting out, or you're probably helping craft the blog posts, maybe some ebooks like you mentioned earlier. Any other areas or areas that you're creating content in that you're excited about? Anything on the content side, the marketing side, on the horizon of Pressable? Maybe not the feature set of the dashboard, stuff like that, but things you're working on that like, hey, I can't wait to ship this piece of content next.
Oh, yeah. We have a video strategy in place that I'm a big lover of video. I've been known to be the person on camera at previous companies, mostly because I was willing. I'd like hunt down people at the company, be like, would you be on camera? And they're like, no. Every so often I got a resounding yes. I will
It sounds like my day job at Gravity Forms.
Yeah, I will find any theater majors in the company and be like, I know you've been waiting for this. Come here. And it's worked out, to be honest. They're fantastic on screen. But yeah, we've got, things that'll launch in the next several weeks. I want to say by the end of January, but probably I'd say mid-February if I'm being realistic. And I don't tend to like to be realistic. But there, that's, I think, the thing that I'm most excited about is because that's one area where like we don't have a ton of video going on because we have an amazing knowledge base. We have an incredibly deep blog. And that's just the next place to go. And especially with video being so important for SEO, with video just being how people are interacting with the world these days. Like, I'm just going to get up on a camera and go like this and say, say what I was going to say instead of typing it into a post. It just makes it more relatable. And when I started out in video, I remember being like, oh, this has to look super polished, and realizing that, like, I think as TikTok and, maybe rest in peace, who knows, and all of the other platforms and reels are just becoming like a little overwhelming. The quality doesn't have to be there of the video itself. I think the audio has to be spot on, and I think that the content has to be spot on. And you cannot, going back to AI, you cannot just ask ChatGPT to write your script for you, because you have to have a unique perspective. Because if you don't have that, there's 45 other people saying the same thing on the same day. Why are they going to watch your video or read your blog? And so there's so much that's going to happen. And this year we're growing the marketing team. We've got a ton of things on the horizon from a product perspective that I dare not speak about. I will not. But I'm really excited about everything that Pressable is doing this year.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Ariele, where can folks find you to say thanks?
I am on LinkedIn. I'm the only one of me in the world. I tend not to be elsewhere readily available, but you can find me, Ariele Krantzow, LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. And I'm sure, since I am the only one of me, if you Google me, you will see some things that I'm truly horrified of.
Everybody else is the WP Minute, the WPMinute.com/subscribe. It's the #1 way to stay connected. And we'll see you in the next episode.